I never imagined a millionaire's plea would lead to an unbelievable bond. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The rain poured like a waterfall, and each droplet felt like a tear on my cheek. I clutched my phone tighter, heart racing, as the cold wind whipped around me. Nick Reynolds, a name that echoed in the halls of wealth, fame, and his burden. She was not just a millionaire. He was a tragedy waiting to unfold. His estate loomed like a giant, shadowy fortress in my small town, but it was no fairy tale. Rumors whispered through the streets about his failed marriage, devastating losses, and the heartache that settled in his mansion like dust. I stood there, trembling, my mind racing back to the last time I saw my brother. He had always been my rock, my guiding star. Now, he was battling a mountain of debt, obstacles piling up like bricks. I couldn't lose him too. Each day felt like a countdown, and now, here I was contemplating an invitation to meet the mystifying Nick Reynolds. The moment I stepped into his home, the atmosphere shifted. The air was thick with secrets, and a lingering scent of cigar smoke. I could see the weight of his pain reflected in the dark corners of his blue eyes. He looked nothing like the powerful figure on television, just a man desperate for connection. "I need someone I can trust," he said, his voice tremulous, resonating deep within me. His confession hung in the air like smoke, wrapping around my chest. But what did he want from me? Why me? I swallowed hard, clammy hands shaking as I leaned closer. I was mesmerized. Hopes and fears danced wildly together. Every heartbeat was a question. Was he really in danger? Did he see in me some flicker of the compassion he had lost? Maybe this was about more than saving my brother. Maybe this was a chance to redefine my own life. But just as I began to believe in the possibility of something extraordinary happening, the lights flickered. The storm outside raged louder. Suddenly, the ground shook, and with it came an unearthly crash from the next room. My breath caught in my throat. What was that? My heart raced, and the haunting idea that this moment was just the beginning gripped me tight. I glanced at Nick, his expression shifting from vulnerability to utter dread. The powerful, mysterious millionaire now just as fragile as I felt. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The reverberation from the crash echoed through the hallways, a stark reminder of the reckoning that loomed larger than either of us. My heart thudded in my chest as I exchanged brief glances with Nick, searching for an explanation that neither of us could find. The storm outside intensified, rain battering against the windows, as if trying to break through the barriers that separated us from the world. "Stay here," he urged, his voice low but commanding. He reached for a nearby flashlight, his movements quick and decisive. It struck me then how he was just a man, stripped of the bravado that his fortune suggested. Beneath his confidence lay layers of fear, and perhaps that was what made him human, a cracked facade beneath the gleaming exterior. I stood frozen for a heartbeat longer, battling the urge to follow him. Instead, I turned my gaze towards the darkness looming in the adjacent room where the sound had erupted. Every nerve in my body tingled with a mix of dread and curiosity, the storm outside a mere reflection of the tempest brewing within. Nick disappeared around the corner, and I felt an uncomfortable twist in my stomach. As minutes stretched painfully long, I focused on the remaining light, hoping it wouldn't flicker out. As I waited, little moments of kindness warmed my heart. The way he had looked at me, his honesty peeling back layers, revealing vulnerability that few would dare to show. Just as I began to wonder if I should venture toward him, The flashlight beam glowed faintly in the hallway, bouncing against the walls like a beacon. "It's okay," Nick's voice broke through, low but steady. I dashed toward him, the weight of concern propelling me forward. When I reached the room, I found it in disarray, books strewn from shelves and a delicate vase shattered on the floor. All eyes were drawn to the window where wind battered mercilessly. The storm knocked down a tree branch. It barely missed the house, Nick explained, his breathing slightly ragged. Relief flooded through me. No danger beyond the nature's fury. But then my gaze fell upon him again. "Nick, you said you needed someone you could trust," I began, my voice trembling slightly as I fought to sound steady. "What's really going on?" A tense silence enveloped us, and I saw his shoulders sag, a hidden weight pressing down. I can't explain everything just yet," he admitted, the flicker of shame in his eyes. "But I need you to know that I am fighting for something big. Something I can't lose." My heart ached for the secrets behind his storm. I longed to comfort him, to tear down those walls he had constructively built to protect his heart. "You don't have to go through this alone," I said softly, stepping closer. "Whatever it is, I promise to be here for you. Just let me in." The moment hung heavy between us, then flickered with the tiniest spark of hope. Nick's eyes softened. A flicker of gratitude crossed his features. "Thank you," he whispered, as if my promise held the power to mend fractured pieces. Yet even as a bond formed in that charged moment, the doubts lingered, clawing at me. I couldn't ignore the spirals of uncertainty surrounding Nick's life, the shadows of loss and mistrust that clouded his world. What had he faced that made him so wary? I couldn't afford to let my heart run wild in this storm. Just as I thought we might catch a breath of solace, a loud crash of thunder reverberated through the house, causing us to flinch as the lights hiccuped and went completely dark. A thick silence enveloped us, as thick as the tension in the air. My heart raced, and just as I opened my mouth to speak, the unmistakable voice of a man echoed from the shadows. "Nick, are you there?" A chill crept up my spine, and I could see Nick's face morph into a mixture of dread and anger. Every instinct within me screamed to flee, but my feet remained rooted in place. "Who is that?" I whispered, my pulse quickening, the bond we just formed feeling suddenly fragile. Nick's jaw tightened, and he took a cautious step forward, his body instinctively positioning itself between me and the source of the voice. "Stay close to me," he instructed, but there was something in his tone, a sense of danger that twisted the air into something suffocating. The shadows shifted closer, and the question hung heavily in the room. What was coming for us? And was our moment of hope about to be drowned in yet another storm? The tension thickened as the darkness wrapped around us, pretending chaos. My fingers grazed Nick's arm, a small gesture meant to ground us both amid the growing uncertainty. The voice continued to echo, taunting us from the shadows, like a specter inching closer. "Nick, answer me," the man called again, his tone laced with impatience that set my heart pounding harder. "I told you to leave me alone." Nick's voice cracked, a burst of raw emotion spilling forth. It was a cry of frustration, desperation, but behind it lay an undercurrent of fear that tightened like a noose around my chest. I'd seen a flicker of vulnerability in him, and now this stark contrast made it clear. He was grappling with forces beyond my understanding. The darkness felt stifling, overshadowed only by the dread pooling within me. I realized there was more to Nick than just the facade I had come to admire. He was wrestling with shadows that threatened to consume him whole. I wanted to reach out, to assure him that this fight didn't have to be his alone, but the sweat prickling at my brow warned me of impending danger. The voice stepped into the dim light of Nick's flickering flashlight beam, revealing a stranger whose presence alone sent chills racing up my arms. He was rugged, with a scruffy beard and piercing eyes that seemed to bore through me, exuding an aura of authority. "Looks like you've found a new friend, Nick," he sneered, shifting his gaze toward me. "But she won't be able to save you." I felt the heat of anger flare in Nick's gaze, grounding myself when I wanted to recoil. "Get out," he growled, a protective fire igniting in his voice. "Oh, but I can't do that." "Not when I have so much to discuss," the intruder said, his smirk maddeningly self-assured as he stepped further into the light. "You know, you're losing your grip on everything, and it's only a matter of time before it all slips away, starting with her." I took a quick breath, the implications of his words striking with terrifying clarity. Was I simply a pawn in whatever twisted game they were playing? The gravity of Nick's trouble suddenly felt magnified, and I wished I had picked a different moment to show my support. I had unwittingly placed myself in the crosshairs of whatever chaos was brewing. "Stay back!" Nick shouted, his anger palpable. He dashed forward, flinging himself between me and the intruder, emphasizing the urgency of the moment. But I watched the flicker of fear pass between them, and knew there was a history I couldn't access. "Brave move," the stranger mocked, a derisive chuckle escaping him. "Protecting a nobody while your world crumbles. Does it make you feel like a hero?" "Stop it!" I blurted out, my voice more forceful than I expected. "Just tell us what you want." Nick turned sharply, eyes piercing into mine, and for an instant, I caught a glimpse of a silent plea. Was afraid, and the weight of that fear anchored my heart. I felt no loathing toward him. What I sensed was empathy for his struggle and the realization that together, we were confined in a storm larger than either of us could comprehend. The stranger took a step closer, fixing me with an unsettling stare. "What I want is your silence," he hissed, pointing toward Nick with a finger that seemed to threaten the very foundation of their relationship. "Nick is a liability now. Save yourself while you still can." I flinched at the accusation. What did that mean about Nick? The fragility of the connection we formed began to crack under the weight of that one assertion. "I'll never betray him," I replied, steadying my voice despite the tremor underneath. Each word was a silent vow, a commitment to stand beside him in moments of darkness. "Think about it, sweetheart," the man drawled, an edge of menace creeping into his tone. "You have no idea what you are getting into. You're just a distraction, a weakness. It would be a shame if someone used that against him." With that final chilling statement, the shadows seemed to deepen, bending the very air between us. My heart raced as Nick's eyes locked onto mine. The desperation reflected there made me tremble. I could feel the buildup of a storm, not just the tempest raging outside, but the tempest of emotions within us, the fear of losing connections and divulging too much against a backdrop of looming peril. The tension abruptly snapped as the power flickered back to life, illuminating the room and casting rapid shadows across the floor. But just as clarity dawned, both Nick and I were petrified by the sight of the intruder's smiling, an ominous reminder that the storm was far from over. "Next time," he said lowly, retreating into the shadows, "it might not be as easy to walk away." The sound of his departing footsteps echoed ominously, and I felt the air rush from my lungs like a balloon deflating. Another chapter of uncertainty turned, yet the burrowed ache in my chest told me the fight was only beginning. I only hoped that what lay ahead wouldn't shatter us before we could forge a bond resilient enough to withstand the storm. The silence that followed the intruder's departure was nearly deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the restored electricity. I turned to Nick, my heart racing not just from fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. His expression was a mix of confusion and anger, as if he were still processing the threat that had loomed over us just seconds ago. "Are you okay?" I asked, despite knowing the answer would not be simple. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen countless times before, but now it felt burdened with dread. "No, I'm not okay. Not at all." His voice trembled with emotion, as if he were struggling to keep it in check. "I can't let him get to you. I can't." I took a step toward him, letting the distance between us shrink. "You don't have to protect me, Nick. I chose to be here." He shook his head fiercely. "You don't understand. This goes deeper than you think. He isn't just some guy. Then tell me, I urged, my voice rising with frustration and fear. Explain this to me. I can't help you if I don't know what we're up against. For a long moment, he studied me, gauging my resolve as if weighing the risks of revealing his secrets. The deep furrows on his forehead, and the way his lips pursed told me that the truth was not something he'd readily share. I've made some bad choices, he confessed quietly, his eyes flickering with vulnerability. And now they'd come back to haunt me. I swallowed hard, feeling the corrosive pull of anxiety. The weight of his past loomed over us. What kind of choices? He hesitated, and in that pause, I could see words wrestling within him, fighting to break free. It's tied to decisions I've made and business people I've hurt or left behind. This is not your fight, Emma. I don't want you to get dragged into it, but I am already, I pressed, refusing to take a step back. You're not in this alone. I can't pretend I don't care. And that's exactly why it's dangerous, he said, his voice turning heavy. Caring about someone can make you weak. And that's what people like him prey on. We stood in the flickering light, the air thick with unsaid words and unresolved fears. My gut twisted at the thought of losing him, not because of some external plight, but because of a tempest lurking in the shadows of his past. I may not be strong like you think, I said, drawing closer. But if you let me, I want to fight alongside you, even if it's just against the darkness within yourself. His eyes softened slightly, yet the storm inside them still churned. You don't know what you're asking for. Try me, I said, determined. Let me in, Nick. Just as he was about to answer, a loud crash echoed from inside the house, a sound sharp enough to raise every hair on my arms. Nick's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his face. Stay behind me, he ordered, instinctively moving to shield me. I knew we were no longer alone, but what awaited us was still a mystery. The atmosphere thickened around us, electric and charged, a magnetic pull toward whatever danger lurked around the corner. Nick edged toward the source of the noise, his body tense and ready for a confrontation. I fought the urge to flee, knowing that whatever awaited would surely test our resolve. But before we could advance further, a figure stepped out from the hallway, a silhouette against the dim backdrop of the room. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized her. It was Sarah, Nick's estranged sister. My heart raced at the sight of her, along with a wave of questions boiling beneath the surface. Sarah? Nick's voice cracked, surprise mingling with disbelief. What are you doing here? The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut through. There was a gravity to her presence, a tiredness etched in her features that reflected the shadows that had become a part of their family's history. I didn't know where else to turn, she said, her voice trembling and soft yet filled with urgency. I need your help, Nick. Things have gone terribly wrong. In that moment, my heartbeat echoed deafeningly in my ears as the emotional storm reared up again, threatening to burst forth. Sarah's arrival was an unforeseen turn that promised to unravel the threads of everything I thought I understood about Nick and the challenges ahead. Is this connected to him? Nick asked, glancing back at me with a mixture of fear and hope. I don't know who else to trust, she said, pleading. The raw desperation in her gaze turned my insides cold. He's coming for all of us. My heart plummeted, recognizing the ominous implications. The darkness was no longer just around Nick. It was about to ensnare all of us, and the storm awaited only our next move. As the shadows began to creep in again, threatening to engulf everything we sought to protect, I felt the pull of an abyss, one I was frightened to face. The fight was far from over, and now we were caught in the eye of a much larger storm. In the fragile silence following Sarah's urgent revelation, I could feel the air thickening, the edges of reality blurring as we stood on the precipice of chaos. Nick's gaze flickered between his sister and me, a storm brewing behind his eyes, as he struggled to reconcile what this new threat meant for us. Things have gone terribly wrong, he repeated, his voice steadying as realization washed over him. What do you mean? Sarah stepped forward, her hands wringing together, eyes darting around as though the walls themselves might be listening. I didn't think he'd find me here. I thought I was safe. Her breath hitched, and the tremor in her voice echoed the despair that loomed large. But it feels like he knows everything about you both. As those words settled into the room, an icy sorrow pooled within me. It was a feeling that came from sensing the tremors of fear that had already started to ripple through Sarah. I added my voice to the tension. Who is he, Sarah? Nick stepped closer, protective yet vulnerable, torn between the past he had spent so much time battling and the present slipping further from our control. You can't keep running. You need to tell us everything, he urged softly, leaning in to touch her arm. But as she opened her mouth, a single tear escaped her lash line, carving a path down her cheek. It's complicated, Nick, she said, emotion swathing her words. There are things I've done, things I've hidden from you in the hope of keeping you safe. The confession hung in the air, a heavy fog of uncertain truths and dark shadows. Each word felt like a trembling step toward an abyss we weren't prepared to face. Just tell me, he whispered, his voice breaking at the edges, a sound I hadn't heard from him before, one that turned my insides to liquid. He's not just coming for you, Nick. He's tied to money. You know how this world works. He found out about the investment deal, our accounts. He's been watching us.my pulse quickened. The web of deceit Sarah was weaving tightening around us. What do you mean by watching? Are you saying he's already here? Not just here, he infiltrated everything. I thought I was helping you all, but the decisions I made, they made things worse. Her voice grew softer, but the hostility of the truth nearly knocked the air from my lungs. He knows about our mother, how sick she is. He's using that, Nick. He's using everything. Tension coiled within the room like a living thing, and the nagging feeling that had shadowed us since our first encounter with danger spread like wildfire. I could see Nick's resolve beginning to crack, the weight of his sister's burdens pressing down on him. We need a plan, Nick finally stated, his voice taut with urgency as he turned to me, searching my eyes for a flicker of understanding. Emma, but a rattle at the back door shattered our fragile moment. The sound was jarring and aggressive, echoing in the stillness, making my heart jump into my throat. Hide! Nick shouted instinctively, and before I could register his command, Sarah grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the stairwell in a desperate rush. No. We can't run, I pushed, fighting against her pull. We need to face this together, but the urgency pressed around us, and I found myself tumbling up the stairs, my mind racing. Despite my protests, the reality that we might not be able to confront this somehow became clearer with every step. Halfway up, a shout rang out below. Nick! Come out! I know you're in there. The voice, laced with malevolence, sent shivers down my spine. It's him, I whispered, dread creeping back into my veins as the voice clawed at my mind, unraveling any resolve I'd managed to cling to. Stay here, Nick ordered, as he faced his sister. He'll handle this. Just trust me. But Sarah's eyes blazed with a mix of fear and fierce determination. You can't do this alone, Nick. Has he said stay? He snapped, the force of his words startling us both. The crack of his voice showed how drained he was, but I could also see that someone who loved this family was about to fight against a darkness they could hardly comprehend. We lingered at the top of the stairs, the sounds of movement escalating, echoing against the walls as Nick took a deep breath before stepping into the line of fire. My heart hammered in my chest as I held Sarah's hand tightly, both of us paralyzed with the reality of what might await him. What are we doing up here? She whispered, desperation flooding her tone. I don't know, I admitted, feeling powerless. But he can't be alone in this. As Nick shouted something from below, voices clashed in a tempest of anger and pain. You will pay for what you've done. Seemed to reverberate through the walls, sending chills through my very core. The next sound sent a jolt of terror through me, glass shattering followed by a heavy thud that felt like it resonated deep within my soul. My breath hitched as I felt my own strength wavering. Realizing how precarious our grip on safety was, I trembled, staring at Sarah, whose own expression reflected the fear I felt cutting deep inside. "What if he doesn't?" she began, but couldn't finish, her eyes wide as she processed the very real possibility that loomed before us. Just then, a new sound broke through, the faint creaking of footsteps moving through the house toward us. The panic set ablaze within me, and before I could think twice, we burst from our hiding place, nudging open the bedroom door to find the other side bathed in darkness. "Nick!" I called, my voice echoing back, swallowed by the shadows where hope seemed to flounder. In that instant, there was silence, deafening, oppressive. It felt like the world had paused, and I realized we were on the brink of losing him, of losing everything we had fought for. As I strained to hear anything at all, the reality of this fight crashed over me. It was still just the beginning. Then, an echo rang out, a voice, not Nick nor the intruder, but another presence, a figure shrouded in the half-light, advancing. An unexpected glimmer of hope in a tumultuous sea of darkness. "Let him go," the voice commanded, a fierce certainty vibrating through the air. The chilling realization struck me as bluntly as the chaos that ensued. We were no longer just playing pieces in a game. We were entrenched deep in a war, one neither of us had anticipated or prepared for. As that familiar figure stepped into the dim light, revealing itself, my heart dropped. Because standing there was someone I never thought I would see again, someone whose return threatened to unravel everything we had clung to amid the storm. And suddenly, the ground beneath me felt deeply unsteady. The room spun as I processed the figure standing before us, a presence from my past, a ghost thought buried long ago. Sebastian. His sharp features were framed by a disheveled mess of dark hair and a suit that, though expensive, looked slightly rumpled, as if he had been dashing through the chaos of the night. "Emma," he gasped, his voice a low mix of urgency and disbelief, as though he had stumbled into his own waking nightmare. The last time I had seen him, there were whispered promises and broken dreams, but now his expression held something more profound, a quiet determination that pricked at the edges of my memory. "Why are you here?" I managed to stammer, incredulity painting each syllable. "What are you doing in this mess?" He took a hesitant step forward, eyes darting to Sarah, still grasping my hand in silent alarm. "I was looking for you. I got your message, a piece of it. I didn't know. I had to come." His gaze shifted, and in that flicker of intensity, I sensed the gravity of his words. "Nick is in danger." "Yeah, no joke," Sarah bit back, her distress barely masked, a mix of desperation and skepticism lacing her tone. "So you thought you'd just waltz in here like you own the place?" Sebastian didn't flinch. "I came to help. But I didn't know. I thought I was just chasing ghosts." His voice softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of vulnerability behind his determined facade. "I didn't want to drag you back into what we faced." Before I could respond, Nick's voice rose again from the chaos below, urgency and panic embroiled with raw emotion. "No! Stop!" The urgency pierced through the haze, and instinct kicked in. I turned back to Sebastian, urgency thrumming through my veins. "We need to help him. Now." He nodded, understanding the stakes, and together we dashed back toward the stairs. Each step resonated with the weight of our shared history of trust and betrayal, love and loss, every thread now pulling tighter as we raced toward an uncertain fate. Reaching the landing, I hesitated for just a moment. The conflict below seemed alive, a monstrous entity fortified by our fear. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm as I glanced at Sebastian. "What do we do?" "Stay close," he instructed, his voice steady now, a newfound strength radiating from him. As we edged down the hallway, the cacophony of voices and shouts morphed into a grotesque song of desperation. "We must stop him. Whatever it takes. We arrived at the top of the wooden stairs, the atmosphere thick like fog. Peering down, I caught sight of Nick, grappling with a figure cloaked in shadows, the intruder's face obscured but unmistakably malicious. "You think you can shield her?" The intruder sneered, his voice dripping with contempt as he shoved Nick backward, prompting a suffocating punch of fear to the gut. "I'll do whatever it takes for her." "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Nick shouted, defiance emanating from him like a flame. "That's where you're wrong, little brother," the voice taunted, the intruder shifting into the light for a brief second, his features hardened and cold, a mirror of everything Nick feared. It was someone we undeniably recognized. "You think your sister will be safe with you? She's the reason all of this is happening." A rush of disbelief coursed through me. As the intruder's face became clearer, I felt the floor tilting beneath spikes of recognition. This was the man who had haunted Sarah's past, the architect of her fears, and now revealed as Nick's twisted reflection of care, a brother turning against himself in the wake of betrayal. It struck me like a hammer. How had it come to this? "Enough of this," Sebastian shouted, his voice cutting through the din, igniting the air around us with unexpected bravery. "You will stop this now." The intruder turned, momentarily stunned by Sebastian's sudden emergence. The pause hung heavily in the air, a fragile thread of hope amid turmoil. "You think you can just barge in here and save the day? This is my game." As he spoke, something shifted inside me. I felt the weight of past grievances fading. I turned from the chaos below to Sebastian, our eyes locking. "We can't allow him to continue this. We need a plan." Determination enveloped us both. There was no going back. Gathering my breath, I found my voice amidst the swirling storm, loud and firm. "You need to leave now. This is not a game. It's our lives." But before I could finish, another commotion erupted. Nick faltering as the intruder lunged forward again, one last throaty shout escaping him. "Listen to me. You don't understand. We're all tangled in this web now." In that moment, as fear clawed at my throat and time ceased to bend, the realization that things would never return to the way they were pressed down upon me like a weight. Clarity washed over me, and I set my jaw, preparing to move. And then I saw behind the confrontation another shadow keeping watch. This one didn't want to fight. It merely wanted a seat at the table, yet it bore a presence that filled my heart with dread. A shape I recognized all too well, and my heart dropped again as I processed the contrast of hope and betrayal lingering in the air. "Emma, don't!" Sebastian shouted, as though sensing what was about to unfold. But I was frozen in place, unable to divert my gaze from the looming figure that could either be salvation or our downfall. The decisions we had made, the bonds that brought us together out of love and desperation, teetered on a precipice, vulnerable to the chaos unfolding around us. Time slipped like sand through an hourglass, and I stood helpless, watching our entire foundation crack apart as my world spiraled into chaos. And with that realization came an understanding lingering far beyond the shadows. Secrets have a way of coming back, and sometimes the ghosts of our past threaten to consume everything we hold dear. The air thickened with unsaid truths as my heart raced. The figure in the shadows stepped into the dim light, revealing not a monster or an enemy, but a familiar face. Laura. My breath caught in my throat. It felt like a cruel trick played by fate. "Laura?" I breathed, disbelief dripping from each syllable. Whether she came seeking reconciliation or revenge, I couldn't tell. Her eyes reflected a storm of emotions, pain, anger, and a glimmer of longing that tore through my chest. Suddenly, everything I thought I knew about loyalty and friendship was cloaked in a fabric of uncertainty. "I didn't think you'd have the audacity to show up here, of all places," I spat out, feeling a surge of hurt mingle with a gut-wrenching fear for Nick. "After everything, I didn't come here for this," she snapped, her voice taut like a bowstring. "I didn't expect to encounter you two again, nor did I want to be drawn into Nick's mess. Isn't that what you always do?" Get drawn into chaos? Because that's all you ever knew, I challenged, a mix of anger and sorrow bubbling to the surface. Despite that familiar spark of animosity, I felt a twinge of empathy. I remembered her struggling, how deeply her past had scarred her. Emma, listen, she implored, stepping closer. If I could turn back the clock, I would. You think I came here to hurt anyone? I can help, but only if you trust me. Sebastian stepped in front of me protectively, his body tense, ready to spring into action if need be. You think that after everything we'd trust you? His tone dripped with skepticism, and rightfully so. Betrayal weaved itself tightly around our past, forcing us to question every motive. I know you don't, but you need to understand. This isn't about us anymore. It's bigger than you, Emma, and it's bigger than your brother, Laura insisted, her voice unsteady but passionate. I came to warn you. The intruder, he's not just after Nick. He's after all of you's after you. My mind swirled. What do you mean? Don't play coy. Your lives are interlinked once again, like threads in a tapestry, and he will unravel every last one of you until he gets what he wants, she continued, her voice rising above the tumult below. You're in more danger than you realize. Each word hit me like a cold slap. The urgency of her warning rippled through the air, tightening my chest. I felt the echoes of our shared history, tangled and intertwined, resurfacing with fervor as they implored me to listen. Stop it! Nick yelled vehemently, breaking through the clashes of anger and anxiety below. What do you want from me, Jeremy? You act like I'm the villain in your story, like I orchestrated this chaos, because you are? Jeremy's voice boomed back, his disdain palpable. You never realized that she doesn't deserve you. You're the anchor weighing her down. His words felt like a punch. I glared at both men, a torrid mix of protectiveness for Nick and mounting frustration with the intruder heating my veins. Enough! I shouted, trying to assert my voice amid their raging tempest. We're not going to sacrifice each other at the altar of your hatred. This needs to stop. Not until you understand the truth, Jeremy countered, directing his venomous gaze toward me. It was Emma who drew the line in the sand, who chose this path, and everyone that would suffer for it. Stop, just stop! I was shouting now, feeling the weight of a heavy fog of reality crashing against me. In that moment, I saw a reflection of chaos born from our decisions swirling in the eyes of both my brother and Sebastian. Past choices tugged at my heart, standing there like specters waiting for an answer, for absolution. Laura clenched her fists, marching toward Jeremy, her face a mask of resolve. You think your bitterness serves you? You don't see that every jab of rage makes you a shadow of who you once were. For a heartbeat, time halted, tension hanging thick between us all. An unmistakable current shifted when I caught Nick's eye, something flickering like a match struck in darkness. It was hope, fleeting yet incandescent, binding us even tighter in our shared struggle. Then I turned back to Laura. The past intertwining with the present, my ire dissolved away, replaced with a longing for clarity. You chose to walk away, I confronted her softly, digging beneath the surface. What made you decide to come back now? Her gaze softened as her resolve faltered for just a moment. Because I saw how broken we all are. I've seen it in myself, and I avoided it. But I can't now, not when it matters most. Something in her voice felt genuine, like a thread reaching out amidst the chaos, interweaving our fragmented paths anew for the sake of survival. But the echo of our shared pain loomed over us, tauntingly unresolved, and I felt for a split second that some truths would never be forgiven, just buried, lurking in tender, dark corners of the heart. Emma, stay out of this! Nick shouted again, wrestling with Jeremy, who was relentless in his aggression. But I couldn't turn back now. I stepped forward. No! We faced this together. Sebastian's presence tightened beside me, a comforting anchor. As we readied ourselves for whatever lay ahead, a realization struck. Trust was fragile, yet here we were again, poised at the brink of our fates, tethered by our aching vulnerabilities. As we prepared to descend into chaos once more, a chilling thought assailed me. Secrets cannot remain buried forever. And as uncertainty loomed, the sun slipped beneath the horizon, darkness enveloping us in a way that felt far too alluring to resist. In the chaos, another shout erupted from Nick. "Emma, look out!" And I turned just in time to see Jeremy leaping toward me, angry resolve etched across his features, violence crackling in the air like a storm about to break. But as I braced for impact, I realized sometimes fate isn't about the power to change our paths, but about recognizing the bonds that tether us to moments we'll never escape. The breathless silence that followed Nick's warning drew in every heartbeat around me, and I felt the world narrowed down to a singular moment, Jeremy's body slicing through the space toward me like a knife aimed at my fragile core. I wasn't prepared to dodge. I wasn't prepared for anything but the shattering of trust, another piece of my shattered heart. But as Jeremy hurtled forward, a flicker of movement caught my eye. Without thinking, Sebastian surged past me, muscles tensed, and shoved me aside just as Jeremy's arm slammed into the ground beside me. The force of the impact reverberated through the air, every emotion twisting into a fray of panic. I looked into Sebastian's eyes, fierce, determined, yet laced with the kind of fear that could ignite a storm. "Stay down," he snapped as he rose to challenge Jeremy, his posture a barrier forged from instinctual protection. My heart raced, not just from the suddenness of the moment, but from the vulnerability it entailed. Here in this cacophony of chaos and betrayal, I saw something blossoming, a strange, unwavering bond woven from the threads of our shared experiences, the things none of us could ever truly escape. "Enough fighting?" I shouted, desperate to reclaim control, my voice cutting through the tumult like a serrated knife. "Can't you see that fighting each other isn't going to help anyone?" Jeremy shook his head defiantly, his eyes full of wild accusation. "You can't just pretend your past doesn't matter, Emma. It will catch up to you. Stop dragging us back. This is not about the past anymore," I contested, my fury igniting a flame behind my words. "This is about the present, about surviving together if we ever want to have a future." For a fleeting moment, a flicker of hesitation crossed Jeremy's eyes like a sudden awareness surfacing amid the storm. Yet it disappeared as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by bitterness. "You don't get it, do you? We're already buried, then let's dig ourselves out together," I implored, grasping at the frayed edges of comprehension. "It's not just on you, or Nick, or me. This is about survival." But just then, the chaos erupted. Nick and Sebastian lunged forward, grappling with Jeremy, as though their trust were a tangible battleground. I felt panic claw at my throat, and yet I couldn't look away. Around us, emotions roared, fists flew, and anger surged in waves. Chaos mutated into a surreal choreography as the shadows wrapped tighter around our reality. Each struggle, each blow felt like it was erasing the remnants of what was once us, and the flicker of hope was nearly extinguished under culpability. In the split second when I thought it would consume us whole, I caught Laura's eyes, silently pleading for a resolution before it all spiraled out of control. Something deep within ignited at the glimmer of recognition. Whatever had fragmented us, whatever past illuminated the harsh paths we'd taken, we still needed to find that beacon of connection amidst the darkness. "No!" I shouted again, a siren tethered to the frenzy. "I won't let you all destroy yourselves." In an instant, I bolted toward them, my heart thunderous in my chest, pulling every shred of courage together as I shoved between Nick and Jeremy, forcing them apart. They both stumbled backward, surprise plastering their faces. "Listen to me," I gasped, fueled by desperation, the heavy weight of their contempt a churning storm. "We don't have the luxury to feast on anger right now. Don't you see? We have a bigger fight on our hands. We can't lose sight of each other." Time seemed to stand still as I registered the tension brimming beneath their posturing. The air hung thick with unresolved emotions, anger still simmering, but beneath it, something else, an unaddressed vulnerability. Jeremy's expression softened, just enough for me to catch an inkling of the person he could have been if past scars hadn't sabotaged him. Then, like a spark igniting dry brush, an eruption of clarity came to life behind Nick's eyes. He stepped forward slightly, beckoning Jeremy to listen, to breathe despite everything threatening to overwhelm us. Emma's right. We need to look past our hatred for one another. You know who's still out there, don't you? Jeremy's brow furrowed, tension resonating through each word. You think we can just pool together, like it's some kind of charity event? Maybe it starts with small acts, I offered softly, feeling the tremor of uncertainty in my resolve echoing within. The kind of acts that remind us we're human,